Southern California has always been at the forefront of rock and roll. Ever since the genre was first established in the middle of the 1900s, the Golden State's southern region never failed to gift the world an era defining band or two during the second half of the 20th century. Even before the Beatles and Stones stormed across the Atlantic in 1964 to ignite the British invasion, the Beach Boys were already bopping about beaches, boards, and bushy blonde hairdos. In the psychedelic haze of the late 60s, as groups like the Jimi Hendrix Experience and Cream were expanding the horizons of guitar driven music, a band led by a former UCLA film student turned self proclaimed Lizard King was indulging in a unique musical trip through West Hollywood and beyond. After the Woodstock era faded into memory, Don Henley and Glenn Frey began cultivating that easy listening Americana sound that would help make the Eagles one of the most listened to and opined on bands in music history. When hard rock was struggling to stand out amongst the saturated and deep musical landscape of the late 70s, a Pasadena, California foursome battled through the local backyard party scene to triumphantly emerge with radio hits and rippin' records as the mighty Van Halen. As the country marched into the MTV generation, 80s youths could scatter across the alluring Sunset Strip, be it in the Whiskey A Go Go or the Roxy, for a much needed dose of Motley Crue's theatrics and Guns N' Roses' testosterone. Before Seattle's grunge would set mainstream culture ablaze in the early 90s, alternative bands such as the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Jane's Addiction were pounding club pavement with unabashed originality, gearing up for their approaching shot at success. And in the middle of the 20th century's final decade, the region again found itself at the epicenter of the music world. After years of toiling around the underground circuit, Orange County bands like The Offspring and No Doubt captured the top of the rock world's thought-provoking process. Over the decades, Southern California has bestowed humanity a treasure trove of iconic groups, albums, scenes, stories, and songs. But the territory's desired way of life and one-of-a-kind ambiance was best musically depicted by Long Beach Trio's self-titled effort that was released as a posthumous tribute to their fallen frontman. The heartbeat of Sublime was, and will always be, lead guitarist, singer, and primary songwriter Bradley Knoll. Brad was a Long Beach lifer, and that was crystal clear in his voice, lyrics, style, hobbies, and habits. His Southern California cadence could not help but shine brightly during his vocal delivery. He sang about classic Golden State topics like the beach, booze, babes, and bud. Not to mention, every music fan worth their salt knows he could play the guitar like a motherfucking riot, which is not always the skill set most associated with the figurehead of a lovable beach bum band. But do not let that California cool demeanor fool you. His lines could be as sharp as a shiv, as social commentary and biting sarcasm were often simmering under his band's sheen musical surface. The man was the ultimate ambassador for the left coast lifestyle. You could easily picture Brad pulling up behind you at an In-N-Out drive-thru, holding the door open for you at the van store, and paddling through the whitewash right next to you. Unfortunately, the good times were not built to last for Sublime's captain, as Brad could not avoid falling victim to one of the gnarliest rip currents in the rock and roll lifestyle. Tragically, his longtime battle with heroin would eventually rob his family, friends, and fans of many more decades with him living easy. In charge of cultivating Sublime's rich rhythm section was Eric Wilson. He slapped that bass with pure authority. His musical range was as potent as a Death Valley heatwave. As his bends and waves could be long and soothing on the band's more chill tunes, 100%, but Eric's fingers could dance with reckless abandon when the group decided to rip off more of a nasty drop-in. The man behind Sublime's drum kit was Bud Gaw. His quick wrists, impeccable timing, and unparalleled ability to discover each track's needed groove played a massive role in the band developing their unique sound. With the group truly bouncing all over the genre spectrum, Bud's seamless transitions from beach bar bops to punk club thwacks were vital. The original Sublime lineup conducted their first gig on the 4th of July, 1988, in Belmont Shore. And the three rambunctious rockers promptly started a riot on the peninsula. The ripping music and rowdy atmosphere poured gasoline on the fire, and unruly attendees started destroying property. The police were called and shut down the concert, kicked people out of the area, and even made 7 arrests. The frantic foray was a fitting way for Sublime's journey to officially begin. Not to mention, the fact the bash took place out in front of Brad's Long Beach home was apropos, as the chaos surrounding the band was never just limited to the songs, stage, or their studio time. Over the next couple of years, the guys would bum around Southern California backyard parties and intimate clubs, honing in their crafts. The music covered such a wide range, it was nearly impossible to not enjoy at least one of the band's attributes. Their work ethic and partying were both relentless. Their live shows were soon becoming the stuff of local legend. "We'd play anywhere, anytime, for anything, for any reason," Bud Goss said in VH1's Sublime Behind the Music. As they toured the glorious backyard club circuit, the band also found a creative way to carve out studio time. Michael Habolt, a good friend of the guys, snuck them into Cal State Dominguez Hills' recording studio after university hours to create a demo tape for free. Over many hours of grinding away during the supposed studio's off hours, Sublime produced Ja Won't Pay the Bills. The 20-track demo was created on January 1st, 1991. While the recording is raw, it is very clear the band was already developing their sound and aesthetic. Brad had penned classic Sublime songs that would appear on later albums, such as Bad Fish, Date Rape, and 40 Ounces to Freedom. And Smoke Two Joints. The band would sell the tape at their live shows, and the recording soon spread throughout Southern California's growing underground music scene. Around the same time the guys were hard at work at the studio and at gigs, Sublime would add another member to their family. In early 1990, Brad adopted an abused Dalmatian puppy he affectionately named Louie, after his grandfather. Lou Dog would become Sublime's mascot and was inseparable from Brad and the band's entourage. Louie could be seen in the band's van and on stage, and would eventually actually even be used in songs and music videos. Sublime's first legit album, if you want to call it that, was titled 40 Ounces to Freedom. The compilation was released through Long Beach label Skunk Records on June 1st, 1992. While partially created in the same smart, sneaky style they produced Ja Won't Pay the Bills, the band would come after hours again to Cal State Dominguez Hills' studio and record the effort while hiding from security. The group also spent time at Mambo Studios in Long Beach as well. Most tracks featured Marshall Ross M.G. Goodman on drums, as Bud Gaw worked on curbing his drug habit at the time. Some of the same demo titles could be appreciated on this album, but in a new light. Date Rape was one track that was given a mighty, mighty makeover. Not to mention, this title track did a masterful job at showcasing what the band was truly all about. As Sublime's colorful genre palette and wide-ranging lyrical topics were on full display, even when produced in a manic recording environment. Sublime was in full experimental mode for their March 1st, 1994 effort, Robin the Hood. The band runs the musical gamut on this album, from a collaboration with No Doubt's Gwen Stefani on Saw Red, to the sweet and sentimental acoustic Mary, to capturing the band's classic sound on Falling Idols, to the expletive ranting and ramblings of Raleigh Theodore Sakers. This album is quite the trip, to say the least. With their local reputation reaching the inevitable limitations of an underground scene's glass ceiling, Sublime was approached by Gasoline Alley, under MCA Records. After a rather cantankerous first meeting, which ended with Lou Dog relieving himself inside an executive's office, fences were eventually mended. The brokering of peace ended with MCA Records' Gasoline Alley, inking the Long Beach Trio to a major label deal in June of 1994. The next year would be a crucial calendar flip-through for Sublime. In January of 1995, the influential Los Angeles alternative rock radio station, 106.7 KROQ, the world-famous K-Rock, added Date Rape to their playlist. The station was a prominent tastemaker in not just Southern California, but K-Rock would grab the attention of program directors from all over the country. The first week after K-Rock played Date Rape, I got a call from every Tom, Dick, and Harry, every producer, looking to book the band, said Sublime's co-manager Blaine Kaplan on VH1's Sublime Behind the Music. As soon as you have a song playing on K-Rock, you're worth something to them. With the iconic LA station helping introduce Sublime's music to a massive crop of people, the band finally got a crack at a legitimate tour. A spot on the first ever Warped Tour. That June also saw Brad's longtime girlfriend, Troy Dendecker, give birth to their son, and they named him Jacob. People in the band's circle noticed Bradley was beaming with pride and joy, and his loved ones were hoping that his personal and professional stream of success would finally get him to conquer his heroin addiction, as Brad had been trying to kick the habit for years. He had a sparkle in his eye that I hadn't seen in a long time, said Eric Wilson in VH1's Sublime Behind the Music. The most important year for the band was undoubtedly, and still is when you're looking at their story, 1996. In the spring, they were set to release their major label debut that summer, after recording sessions in Austin, Texas. On a West Coast tour, the crowd was in a frenzy of appreciation, taking in live renditions of songs that were set to come off the new record. But lamentably, the band's voice, guitarist, and soul would not live long enough to truly realize just how much his music would positively impact the world. Hello, I am Chad Jones, and welcome to Don't Scratch the Vinyl, a music podcast where I, and occasionally a guest, break down an iconic album in its entirety. This show both lays out the historical significance of the record and what music fans can take from the compilation today. I am recording this episode at Ugly Duck Studios in Boston, Massachusetts. Thank you for tuning in and engaging with the show. As someone who was introduced to this world in a hospital room a mile from the Pacific Ocean, the calendar year after the release of Sublime's self-titled album, you could say I was born into Sublime fandom. Of all the Southern California bands and musicians I would soon become exposed to, the Long Beach Trio stood out for multiple reasons. Their eclectic musical taste left it impossible for them to be put into a square distinction. Putting this in quotes, are they punk? Partly, but not entirely. Are they reggae? Well, that is certainly in their DNA, but not exclusively. Are they ska? What the fuck is that? Stop making up genres, I thought, not knowing what ska was when I was first introduced to the term. They're an alternative beach band, like, well, actually, nobody really quite sounds like them. You know what? Don't worry about it. They're Sublime. Listen to them at the beach bonfires or pool parties you're having over the summer, and tell me they don't improve the vibe. That is all you need to know about these guys. What also stood out to me was their point of origin's distance from my hometown of Huntington Beach. Whenever I tell people I am from Southern California, I can see in their eyes they're about to ask me something related to Los Angeles. I try to inject before they can finish the L in LA. I informed them I grew up about an hour south of Los Angeles and about 2 hours north of San Diego. If they are somewhat familiar with the region, I can add that I was coastbound from Disneyland. It is an important distinction that people know that I am not from the city of angels. I have my own Orange County stereotypes to worry about. I do not need the cement boots of the Valley and Santa Monica tropes also weighing me down. And I did not have much of a relationship with our most famous city much growing up. It would be disingenuous to claim Hollywood as an integral part of my upbringing. The biggest connection I have with Los Angeles culture is, and will always be, the area's history of rock. Groups like Van Halen, The Doors, Guns N' Roses, and others have blared from my headphone speakers for many an hour. But even with those bands forming close to where I grew up, they're not from where I grew up. No, that honor would be grabbed by the classic OC alt bands like Social Distortion, No Doubt, and The Offspring. I can identify with a significant portion of these bands' musical and lyrical aspects. But there's a pretty big theme missing from these terrific groups' repertoires. The Fullerton, Anaheim, and Garden Grove areas are key parts of Orange County's landscape, but none of these rockers grew up with the word beach in their communities. And the lack of oceanfront property in any of these bands' hometowns makes a lot of sense when looking at their aesthetics. Surfing and bonfires are not an integral part of Mike Ness's, Gwen Stefani's, or Dexter Holland's musical landscape. As someone who was born and worked in Newport Beach and experienced childhood, adolescence, and early adulthood in Huntington Beach, Sublime sang and played like they still had sand between their toes. And that aspect has always appealed to me. The band conducted themselves as the quintessential beach bar band, without it ever feeling like a Halloween costume. To this day, there is no band I would rather hear cruising down the Pacific Coast Highway, either on a bike or in my truck, than Sublime. And if I drift down to my hometown's Dog Beach, I can literally see the band's hometown in the distance. And that circumstance also made them feel more real, at least to me. They were not from Malibu or Pasadena, places I could find on a map, but very rarely, if ever, actually ventured out to. I understood Long Beach's energy, and it made Sublime's music that much more inviting. Not to mention, the LBC is as close as you can get to being in Orange County while still residing in Los Angeles County. And that factoid would weave through the band's different song styles. Sublime could dive into a cool, refreshing ditty that would be perfect to soak in while enjoying a relaxing day on the OC coast. But they were just as capable of ratcheting up their play to a more hardcore, artistic expression, worthy of an LA club. That tightrope act made their sound and style intoxicating to countless locals like me. And lastly, bringing it back to me entering the world a year and a half after Sublime's final record with the original three-piece, the era they rocked in absolutely played a role in their appeal to me. Yes, the Beach Boys sang about surfing and California girls, but they were my grandparents' age, basically. Motley Crue and GNR rocked the hell out of the Sunset Strip, but my mother could have, in theory, attended these shows. And don't get me wrong, I live for rock and roll history. I really hope that point is clear with me literally hosting this show, but that is neither here nor there. But I was not old enough to live through any of the original Sublime run. That's true. But you know what? I was born in Sublime's California. Their legend was already growing by the time their music penetrated my ears and heart. I could not, with any possible degree of accuracy, remember my first time experiencing Santeria, Bad Fish, or What I Got. That would be akin to asking me the first time I recall hearing my own mother's voice. Sublime's essence connects me to my hometown in a way that basically no other band does. While growing up, it was clear to me there was some, let's say, disconnect between the music I generally enjoyed and what my friends and classmates listened to. I recall one time trying to play Aerosmith during a camping trip at the height of the Mumford & Sons era, and my curation was not exactly met with ravenous applause. Yeah.
can't reach the cable that's plugged into, so if that happens again, we can just pause and
Yeah,
re-play. That's okay.
all good.
I'm sorry about that, dude.
No, no worries.
Of course, I've literally never heard that camera talk. So that's how it goes. All right, so just from that line again,
Yeah.
just keep everything rolling.
Perfect. Perfect. While growing up, it was clear to me there was some, let's say, disconnect between the music I generally enjoyed and what my friends and classmates liked listening to. I recall one time trying to play Aerosmith during a camping trip at the height of the Mumford & Sons era, and my curation was not exactly met with ravenous applause. But that never happened with Sublime. Even if they were not someone's favorite, I never recall hearing a peer say, "You know what band fucking sucks, Chad? Sublime. They make me want to fill my ears with honey and dive headfirst into an anthill." I am sure there was people around me who felt that way, but it was never expressed. It would have just come off as so bizarre hearing that from someone I grew up with. Like hearing someone say they hate cheese fries. I think it is really hard for Southern Californians to rip on Sublime because, well, the music was made about people like us, by people like us, for people like us. I mean, case in point, the opening dialogue in Badfish starts off with, "How's it going, dude? Hey man, what's up?" I've been a part of that conversation with the added vocal drawl at least 27,000 times. Sublime made music that sounded like the Southern California I grew up in by guys that looked and talked like people in my community and classes. To my eyes and ears, no other band has been able to ride that wave quite so well. The members really do sound like neighborhood pals, the kind maybe you don't need to see all the time, but you could never imagine living without. And in diving headfirst into the band's catalog in preparation for this episode, those tingling feelings resurfaced all over again. It is quite the emotional undertaking putting this album and band into a historical and modern context for the show. And that is not a task that I take lightly. As Sublime's self-titled album was not only a touching tribute to their fallen leader, but the record lives on as a critical document needed for understanding the complex intricacies of Southern California culture. Sublime's 1996 self-titled album starts off with Garden Grove. The ominous musical build-up sets the tone for this record. The instrumental play is positively groovy. But this song's infrastructure is stabilized by Brad's voice and the band's writing. Unbelievably well done scene building in the opening line. "We took this trip to Garden Grove," Brad sings. "It smells like Lou Dog inside the van." Garden Grove, especially when the song was recorded, is a working class area of Orange County. And that is actually where the guys from The Offspring are from. Brad's lyrical delivery is so rich and layered, like how he rolls his R's on VCR. Terrific stanzas can be found throughout this track. "If you only knew all the love that I found," bleeding to "It's hard to keep my soul on the ground." I love the addition of the dog barking in the song as well. And yes, fun fact, that is Louie. Brad's voice has a way of lulling you into a chill headspace and then erupts on certain notes. Like on the portion, "Pull over, there's a reason my soul's unsound," is delivered so nonchalantly. And then the next line of "It's you" rings out like wild bells. Then we cross one of the most dynamic musical bridges in Sublime's catalog. Brad goes on a measured rhyming diatribe while simultaneously voicing frustration. There are so many fascinating nuggets that point towards key themes for the band, both musically and in their personal lives. Different lines in this portion can jump out on each listen. I think a great lyric to sum up Sublime's ethos is saying "I'm happy when I'm not." The band wanted to portray the ultimate, fun, laid-back party image. They did that on stage, in interviews, and especially during their songs. Yet, there was undoubtedly a layer of darkness that never fully left the band with Brad. This song does a magnificent job of revealing the band's complexities. The silly lines intertwine poignantly with some of the more heavy themes. and that was a calling card of Sublime's musical structure. Next up, What I Got. The intro dialogue is forever seared into my brain before the song even gets underway. It sounds a lot like someone says, "Oh, fuck you, Kenny." And then the track snaps into form. That emotional guitar picking always teleports me home to Southern California. And then Brad slides in on the most memorable sequence in any Sublime effort. Early in the morning, rise into the street, light me up that cigarette, and I'll strap shoes on my feet. It never fails to reel me in. The moving voice affliction makes it clear Brad is singing from the heart. There is some serious sincerity coursing through not just the lines, but the musical play. The song has so many terrific lyrical sequences, I could really just read through the entire tune line by line. I got a Dalmatian, and I can still get high. I can play the guitar like a motherfucking riot. It hits me in the gut on every listen. I will never forgive the FCC for censoring this true artistic masterpiece. 3 simple sentences that perfectly encapsulate what Sublime is all about. That feat is difficult to accomplish inside one song, let alone in less than 20 words. As much power as that message wields on its own, the real soulful plucking of the acoustic guitar here, combined with the whistling, makes this song truly spectacular. But Brad and the boys are not done turning What I Got into their magnum opus. Well, life is too short, so love the one you got is beautiful on its own, but the line is positively devastating, knowing Brad never got to see just how much the song would resonate with people. While the lyrics are poignant, the delivery is what makes them so relatable. Lovin' is what I got is one of the defining lines of 90s rock. That lyric may as well be the band's mission statement. Love the moments where Brad is also pseudo-whispering his lines out. This track is the ultimate Sublime song. If I had to explain this band to someone who had never heard them in only 5 minutes, I would play them What I Got, and I would spend the rest of the time observing their reaction. The quintessential Southern California anthem. Off to Wrong Way. The opening line on this one is not for the faint of heart. Annie's 12 years old, in 2 more she'll be a whore. And the song really does not lighten up much from there. The story is a wild ride, like a sketchy roller coaster put up quickly during a county fair. The only family that she's ever had is her 7 horny brothers and a drunk-ass dad. Like, wow, talk about a dysfunctional family dynamic. But gotta love the sarcasm and quip delivering Brad offers up with the setup of, everything was going fine until the day she met me. This song also shows how Brad's delivery could smoothly yo-yo back and forth, as he always had his finger on the pulse of when to speed up or slow down his pace. And his ability to sing in a breakneck speed while still enunciating clearly, as well as his ability to ease off the gas for cruise control, was a massive reason his vocal performances are just still so colorful decades later. That's a part of Sublime's catalog that has aged very gracefully. The music is some of the most interesting on the album. Bud kicks in the tempo behind the kit to give the number the sense of a car chase scene, especially after the song's initial surge touches down. And the horns. We can't forget the horns. The trombone brings some brevity to this really depressing lyrical journey that we're on. Sublime is playing with a classic music trick, coding upbeat, catchy instrumental play over real black and blue lyrics. The music only jolts the listener that much more so, and helps them get invested in Annie's story. Brad is also going back to a theme that he dips into every so often, singing about the possibility of indulging in violence with the family of the girl he is courting. That theme would appear in a later effort on this album as well. This is a certified canonical Sublime song. Despite the unsettling subject matter, the track gets consistent radio play to this very day. The guys were masters at pairing bummer lyrics with bright music. Next up, Same in the End. The guys slip on their punk attire for this effort. Brad sings at a unbelievably rapid pace, yet enunciates crystal clearly. Those are both very underrated aspects of his vocal skill set, as Sublime's classic delivery conveys more of a laid-back singing style. But he was capable of absolutely erupting and shooting out his lines at a much more manic manner when appropriate. On top of that, it is natural for faster lyrics to not be quite as easy to decipher. Especially in the 90s, rock frontmen were notorious for producing incoherent lines, either due to speed, mumbling, or frenetic screams. But Bradley did a consistently superb job of delivering understandable lyrics, even with the pace cranked up considerably. Which is a key part of this number, as the lines are all over the spectrum. So typical of a Sublime tune. There are not many rock bands that would include portions about, quote, "It ain't hard to understand, this ain't Hitler's master plan, what it takes to be a man," and "Wreck tight on my ass and it makes it itch" in the same song. Those sound like lines from two completely different tunes. But with Sublime, not only do they include both of them in segments in the same song, the lines do not seem out of place in the lyrical narrative when Bradley's the one belting them out. And the portion of him singing, "Day that I die will be the day that I shut my mouth and put down my guitar," hits so much harder knowing this line came true before the album was even put out. Also, you gotta love the little laugh that made the recording in the intro part as well. Musically, the song has a lot of instruments at play. The guitar crashes down like a tsunami, the drum beat is smooth and powerful, the instruments form a mosh pit during the chorus too, and that really electrifies this number from start to finish. Next track, April 29th, 1992. So a real-life radio play dispatch recording during the LA riots sets up this track, which, as this song covers, was a nationwide outburst that transpired in the aftermath of the verdict for the police officers involved in the Rodney King incident. Such an awesome, powerful decision to include multiple police clips for this song. It really helps convey the feelings of being at these riots. Brad's voice is so impassioned with the subject matter and creative with his delivery. You could feel his teeth gritting on certain lines. He was exploring with pauses and enunciations that really make the song pop. A phenomenal example of this is when he sings out, "I was participating in some anarchy." His breath control and snap on these words make an already important subject matter that much more gripping. The music does a wonderful job propping up Brad's voice and storytelling. The instrumental play is underrated, but it's also understated for this song. The drums, bass, and guitar offer up a vital pulse that helps keep the track moving. Not to mention, the dramatic pauses only build up the pressure that much more so. And the instruments help pull a rubber band of tension to its breaking point, where it eventually snaps. And that moment comes when Brad belts out, "Let it burn, wanna let it burn, wanna let it burn, wanna let it burn." He sings about the riots happening in cities all over. There is a layering effect with double vocals, and you can hear multiple places referenced at the same time. A phenomenal detail in this track. My hometown of Huntington Beach gets a shout out. The most memorable enunciation to me was Cleveland, Ohio. While it is debated if Sublime actually participated in the riots themselves, you can hear the real passionate delivery that Brad sings when he's talking about the police. That seemed to stem from a real personal frustration. This is one of multiple songs on this album that do not put cops in the most favorable light. Maybe it stemmed from officers shutting down Sublime's first ever show, or that occurrence would consistently go on for years as the band was coming up in Southern California. You also may notice a really interesting detail. The song's title is April 29th, the day of the riots. But Brad sings out April 26th. He famously just said the wrong date during a recording, but the guys decided to keep it in. On a demo tape that was later released on Secondhand Smoke, the correct date was used. Next up, Santeria. The drawn-out guitar bend at the start elicits such a feeling of longing. This is truly a touching tune, especially when focusing on the musical contributions. There is just such soulful play coming from the three guys Their chemistry was unquestionably potent throughout their time together, but this song may be the best example of the guys' special connection. And the sentimentality on this number is not limited to the instrumental play. Brad really shows off his vocal range, ping-ponging through different emotions. The wild range of vocal tone elicited on If I Can Find That Hyena to I'd Slap Her Down is so incredibly varied, and yet mere seconds separate these two amazing vocal moments. Brad was able to get himself into an intimate headspace when recording much of this album. That's very clear. And his raw emotional performance throughout these songs is the biggest difference between this effort and the other records the original Sublime Trio put out. The guitar tone on this number is quite spectacular too. It sounds very similar to when John Frusciante taps into an emotive performance, like on the Red Hot Chili Peppers' Scar Tissue. The music video is also such a touching piece of art, especially when paired with this particular song. Bud and Eric cameo as old Western cowboys. Tom Lister Jr. was cast for the role of Sancho. Troy Knoll, Bradley's widow, played the role of Lahaina, and Lou Dog is unquestionably the star of the shoot. But the most tear-jerking aspect of this video is that they decided to use stock footage of Bradley playing and smiling and put it in hologram form. The gesture conveys the idea of his spirit still being a part of the band. The video execution is just flawless, and it helps the song live on, as well as be shown continually to music fans as a beautiful introduction to what Sublime is all about. Moving over to Seed. The band bounces all over the genre gamut in like 40 seconds. A very quick-wristed drumming splurge, almost reminiscent of a Civil War time march into battle, lights this track's musical match. Before a real thrashing effort really catapults it forward. The punk tenacity the band kept in their back pocket erupts on this track. But then it also seamlessly transitions to that Rasta reggae influence that plays such a mighty role in the band's musical palette. And not only does the brash play speed up and slow down with deadly accuracy, Brad's colorful voice gets a chance to show off its varying levels. There are times during the punk portions where his delivery is manic and very intense, yet he still finds a way to enunciate clearly and not come off at all as jumbled. He then finds the perfect pocket to barrel that wave and delivers some real expressive lines in that patented Sublime groove. This song accomplishes a lot in only 130 seconds. Brad, Eric, and Bud not only show how tight and talented they were musically, by indulging in multiple rock genres in the allotted time, but the vocals and lines are so full of rich flavor as well. A terrific track to play to someone who's first getting into Sublime. It shows that they were not always tuning out those incredible layback songs that were on radio from now until the end of time, like What I Got and Santeria. Also, this tune got play in sought-after media real estate, a Tony Hawk video game, as this Sublime song was used in the soundtrack for Tony Hawk's Underground 1. Hard to get a more significant stamp of cool approval than being introduced into the world through that video game to some people. Next up, Jailhouse. The instrumental play on this song is ridiculous. There is such an infectious groove tattering through. It's almost teetering on becoming a blues tune. Drumming is the cleanest of any track on this album. The guitar and bass are just so powerful together. It's really enjoyable that certain times there's a mesh of all three instruments intertwining, and then other times the spotlight shines on one of the individual players. That point is really driven through on those delicious pauses, and I like how Bradley gets the chance to really show off his world-class guitar play, which is certainly an overlooked aspect of the band's musical footprint. He was an alternative rocker through and through, but his guitar play was far from rudimentary. And this track in particular is great evidence to use for that statement. The musical flow is in such lockstep, as there are so many instances throughout Sublime's catalog that shows off the band's ability to induct that type of feel. And you can really tell that the guys were playing in so tight after countless of hours together as a threesome, which was the case for real. Vocally, Brad is pulling out all the stops in this effort. His caterwauling is balanced well with some subdued, nearly talking. Just so much variety and interesting details throughout this number. This song has the ability to reveal new aspects on each listen, or at the very least, bring your attention to a previously overlooked element. Many of Sublime's songs come loaded with that quality, and the little wrinkles become even more defined the more you tune into this song. Taking a trip down to Pawn Shop next. A flat out gnarly guitar riff gets this number underway. Brad, man, he really gets his six strings to deliver a wicked whine. As the play is so grimy, down and dirty, it nearly gives you fleas. The most deliberate effort on the album. What stands out on this track is that it includes by far the longest musical intro. Brad's voice doesn't swing in until 74 seconds in. The music gets a chance to really stew with the best instrumental greeting on the album. This song is all about capturing a vibe. There is real ample space for Bradley, Eric, and Bud to really let the instruments do the talking on this one. The music and lyrics are very repetitive, almost trippy, as Brad's vocals of "Down Here at the Pawn Shop" are practically played on a loop. This song is more about eliciting an ambiance than anything else. When I initially heard this number, I liked it, but thought it was a bit too drawn out. Like I would easily tune out from the track's monotony. But recently, especially during this listening prep for this recording, I found myself appreciating the energy more and more of this track. This song is a way of putting you in almost a trance-like setting. I would be curious to hear from fans who have this as their number one Sublime song of all time, as I certainly appreciate the track's elements, but I often get so caught up in Sublime's lyrics and Bradley's storytelling in so many of their songs, whereas this track is so much more about feel. Next up, Paddle Out. Such a jarring avalanche from the previous track, as a snotty punk anthem through and through belts over. It's chaotic, it's supercharged, and it's clocking in at just 1:15. It is the shortest song off this album. Musically, the guys are just destroying their instruments on this number. Eric's bass is so vicious, Bud's wrists are working overtime to capture the drum beat, and Bradley is getting his guitar to really squeal. They all combine to form a tsunami of fast-paced punk. Again, it bears mentioning how Sublime could outright shred whenever they wanted to. So especially for people who are casual fans or really just know their big hits, that fact may come off as surprising. But going through their full catalog, frantic tunes consistently pop up. And the songs shine through on this album, with the band finally getting a chance to implore major label production for the first and only time as an original threesome. Moving over to The Ballad of Johnny Butt. And we are back to the Rasta reggae influence on this number. The buoyant drum beat bounces up to start this tale, and it's again fascinating storytelling. Bradley is singing about a character named Johnny, but oddly enough, they appear to share some of the same life details. A man with a real strong will to survive. He'd just keep pushing on, even though he was barely alive. So, shoot it up. Shoot it up. It just don't matter. That sounds eerily similar to a real sentiment in Bradley's life. His father, Jim, recounted a heartbreaking incident on VH1's Sublime Behind the Music, where he and Brad's stepmother tried to stop him from leaving the house to go and take heroin, after Brad had not shot up in 2 days. Both Jim and his stepmother had to get physical to keep Brad there, and Jim put him against the wall, and Brad said, "Dad, there's no use. If it's not now, it's going to be some other time." It is always a harrowing aspect of listening when you notice these connections in songs from fallen rockers. Brad offers an enriched, powerful vocal lifts throughout this number, and the slowed down music really adds to the song's uneasiness. Not to mention another line about relating violence towards a police officer. To some fans, Sublime's reputation is connected to a strict diet of easygoing music. But a deeper look into their catalog will reveal the darkness, often overshadowed by their radiant exterior. Moving over to Burritos. This song passionately lacks ambition. Like the ultimate stoner anthem. The trademark Sublime upbeat guitar tone really drives this number musically, as the three guys had their fingers on the pulse of what this song demanded instrumentally. But this track is all about Brad's look at life in the moment. He must have been able to get into a real life crisis situation in his head for this song. Don't want to look at naked chicks and drink beer. I don't want to go do a bong load. Man, he doesn't want to spank the monkey, go down to the corner bar, or read about OJ. He was really envisioning the ultimate downer of a day when crafting this number. When these acts are his truth, you know Brad's in trouble. But this tune also shows off Sublime's brilliance, diving into a serious topic, like feeling so bummed out you don't want to leave your bed at all, but drilling in these over-the-top, humorous aspects that just can't help but make you chuckle as a listener. Portraying depression with a hefty dose of laughs. Sublime definitely had the ability to bring that out from their musical playbook. Great song to hear either hungover or when you're chilling on a lazy Sunday. Moving over to Under My Voodoo. A really thrilling, dynamic introduction. My favorite musical concoction on this record, and one of the most impactful instrumental efforts in Sublime's body of work. The trio's play, most notably that unbelievably wicked guitar tone, is so enthralling. It goes beyond punk to evolve into almost a hard rock song. The layering of the instruments drives home the beat with the authority of a sledgehammer. That intro guitar from Brad just bleeds out raw emotion, and then Bud whips out one of the most ripping fills in the band's catalog. His pace, timing, and unabashed aggression behind the kit erupts on this number. Also, Eric's thumping bass really plays a key role as it's illuminated throughout this song. His alluring lines give the track's rhythm section a critical pulse. The three of them were never more locked in than on the song's frantic solo. The Long Beach three-piece was at the peak of their creative powers, and on this track, their chemistry causes an atomic bomb of music euphoria. The instrumental implementation is so hypnotic and all-encompassing. The lyrics could have consisted of reading out a grocery list, and the song still would have been positively superb. Not that Brad's voice in this effort is chopped liver by any stretch. He really digs down deep to light a fire, especially when he growls out, "Under my voodoo," with a real bite he rarely brought out in his lines. But this quality really shines through with the music implementation. It is truly the band staggering down classic rock avenue. With the intricate guitar riff, swinging drums, and vivacious bass. Not to mention, the shining spotlight on all three guys' play, both together and for the solo section. This song leaps off the album for all the right reasons. Next up, get ready. For this number, we ease off the accelerator again to pop in regularly scheduled Sublime programming. That hefty drum beat is back and better than ever, and Bradley is rehashing a few of his favorite topics: smoking weed, playing music loud, and ragging on the men in blue. But here, he combines the three ideas into a single narrative. This is another song that rings autobiographical for Bradley and the rest of Sublime. We like the music loud in this here band. We let the bass drop as loud as we can stand. It does not seem that Bradley and the boys needed to dig that deep to work out the lyrics for this track. Especially considering for a time, Sublime was the backyard party band in Southern California. Brad's father admitted he dealt with neighbor complaints everywhere he lived, as the guys were always looking for gigs in or out of their home. But the cops would consistently be called to shut them down, and it appears that frustration never quite left the band. Like all great artists, the guys channeled their energy to produce compelling art, and that vexation would permeate in multiple Sublime songs. And it comes across as subtle as a jackhammer on this tune, as part of the song includes Bradley literally asking if anyone in the crowd is going to call 911 and, quote, spoil all of my fun. The effort even has a threatening quality to it when Bradley sings out, "I'm in the mood, get ready." The fact he releases that line so calmly actually adds to the uneasiness ringing through this number. And then one of the most ripping sequences off the album shoots up. Load up the bong, crank up the song, let the informer call 911. This song has even more escalating threats of violence than April 29th, 1992. As the part about just pull out the 9, pop in the clip, and let one slip towards the police officers coming in is about as jarring as Sublime's music gets. Next up, Caress Me Down. The most scrutinized lyrics on the album, and almost certainly in Sublime's discography, can be found on this number. From the mention of Ron Jeremy to the line, "When I kiss Mexi, she makes me feel horny," after first introducing her in the song as a pretty little daughter. The Ron Jeremy reference just straight up did not age well, as the former adult film star was indicted in 2021 by a Los Angeles grand jury on 34 counts of sexual assault, where he pled not guilty. That is some rather unfortunate baggage to tie around the neck of this song. Now, for the other controversial portion on this track, I am confident Bradley did not write this song with the intent of portraying Mexi as his biological daughter. She is probably related to the man he seems to be antagonizing at the start, when he introduces himself by singing the Spanish greeting, "Mucho gusto, me llamo Bradley." Daughter could also be a straight replacement for an affectionate term, like baby girl. A few aspects of this song's lyrical framework are up for interpretation. But whatever the case, Bradley is up to his violent threats again with his lover's family. If you want to get beat physically, it would be over in a minute. And then we cruise into a very vivid sexual description of a hookup. But in classic Sublime fashion, the segment comes off as more harmless and humorous than straight up grotesque. Which is no small feat considering the line of, "I didn't know she had the G.I. Joe kung fu grip." Always gets me to smile. The light musical play, effective use of pausing, which gives the feel of clapping, seamlessly intertwines through the song's vivid storytelling. The tune plays with space so effectively throughout their musical breaks and the punches. And Bradley gets a chance to really indulge in his fascination with Latino culture, as a great portion of this song includes him singing in Spanish. Ultimately, it is really hard to hear this song and not be in a good mood. The definitive song to tune into for a Sunday morning either alone or with company. Next up, a song so good they had to put two different renditions on the album. What I Got. This is the reprise version, and this song is so iconic, it had to get two versions. A few things that stand out on this emotive rendition. Musically and vocally, the pace is slowed down a bit. The listener can then really marinate with the track's details. Brad gets more time a cappella for this one, and it really jumps out when you're listening to this take. This effort does a masterful job out of eliciting that sweet yet melancholic emotion the original version does so well. It is fair to wonder how much of these emotions build up from the fact that the original band never got to see how this song would resonate with their core audience and music fans all over the world to this very day. As the original Sublime lineup did not perform this song many times live, there are not many recordings or footage available online. The track's energy is in the same vein as the standard recording, and there is a real debate between Sublime's fans and music fans alike on which one is the better rendition. Which one do they prefer? Radio stations have played both of them over and over throughout the years. I grew up soaking in the original version, but I adore this take as well. What about you? Sublime's self-titled album ends with "Doin' Time," the perfect song to blast on a hot afternoon near a body of water. The intro music, especially the lovely inclusion of a vibraphone, does a phenomenal job of capturing the feeling of a low-stakes summer hangout. Almost as if you were diving into a chill pool. The music hooks you into a head-nodding trance, despite the darker lyrics festering during certain segments. There really are two lyrical expeditions happening at the same time on this one. The Bradley's on the microphone with Ross MG portion is a quintessential Sublime narrative. Partying, LBC, which stands for Long Beach, California. Louie, Summertime, Easy Livin', all neatly accounted for in Sublime's musical burrito. But then there is another story being discussed here. She spreads her lovin' all over and when she gets home, there's none left for me. There is some brilliant pausing for a split second with the line of, I'd like to hold her, as the listeners may be thinking, after all these issues he is still really wanting to be close to this girl. But then Bradley oozes out, head underwater. Oh, that's what he's talking about. Uh-oh. Classic Sublime, throwing a lot at you instrumentally, lyrically, and vocally, while still creating a nonchalant musical environment. Also, it's one of the few songs on this album to rock a more standard verse, chorus, bridge structure, as much of the band's tracks are styled in a manic recording nature. This is a very solid song to choose as the album's closer, as the song highlights many key elements that made Sublime who they were. Lana Del Rey's 2019 cover of Doin' Time helped introduce this song and band to countless people. Her hypnotic voice plays incredibly well with the track's energy. Not to mention, it is fascinating hearing this song be expressed through a woman's point of view. Moving over to the categories, Crank It Up to 11, ultimately the best portion of the record. And I think that is the guitar intro through the first Lovin' Is What I Got on What I Got. This song is pure bliss to my ears. I get a stream of emotions coursing through me whenever I am fortunate enough to have this track grace my schedule. And the first half of the song strikes the hardest chord to me. What I Got, and specifically the first half, is music perfection. Reshuffling history, going through the album's order, and it is absolutely loaded from start to front. There are so many different avenues explored, and yet the record's flow just works so well. Garden Grove and Doin' Time are fascinating starting and ending points, as our journey gets underway with a trip to Garden Grove, California, and winds down in the easy livin' summertime has to offer. Great storytelling, and you could talk me into starting this album with What I Got. And I've talked before on the show that it is hard for a band to predict which songs are going to take off. Would the guys have wanted to still put Wrong Way after What I Got, had they known those were going to be two of their most popular songs? Would they have even wanted to triple down and put Santeria after that dynamic duo for the record? The record in the middle part can get a tad slow, with Paddle Out wedged in the middle of The Jailhouse, Pawn Shop, The Ballad of Johnny Butt, and Burritos Run. Would the record be more balanced with one of the more up-tempo emotional hits in there? I'm not sure, as that section of the album is certainly a vibe and a half. There was a deluxe album release with mostly the same songs, but a change up in the order. I think this album's layout is very strong, but it is a fun conversation looking through the 17-song record. Reprogramming history. What songs were big in real time and have held up the best throughout time? There are a few massive songs off this album that people who are even not super familiar with 90s jams, rock, or know that much about California culture are very still likely to have heard. What I Got, Wrong Way, Santeria, and Doin' Time have all penetrated culture in one way or another when the album was released and since then. So the first three are massive alternative rock radio staples now and have popular music videos on YouTube. And Doin' Time was huge in real time, and it remains popular, especially with that Lana Del Rey version. Those four songs off this album play a critical role in Sublime's staying power. It makes all the sense in the world they were the four big hits initially from the album, and have sustained relevancy throughout the decades. There are also a couple of big tracks on this record that are not quite as popular, like Pawn Shop, Caress Me Down. I do think there are a few other songs from this record that deserve a bigger spotlight, such as Under My Voodoo and Get Ready. There is not a bad song off this compilation, and that always makes it a very fascinating aspect of doing this show, as so many records are historically categorized as important and iconic, but a lot of the times, only the real big hits are the ones that get the recognition. This record is wonderful start to finish, and as terrific as the four big hits are, this album is much more than just them. I highly recommend, especially if you are much more familiar with the popular tracks off this record, marinate with the whole catalog set. You will not be disappointed. The Pulling Teeth Award, underrated track. Definitely Under My Voodoo wins. It's an absolute ripper. The energy is deliciously infectious and shows off what Sublime could absolutely transform into when they wanted to dive into their punk, hard rock edge. The music of this song, most notably that wicked guitar play, is incredibly feral. This Ain't Havana Award for song that blew you away the most recent or first time you heard the record. Caress Me Down, I recall, was the first non-Stone Cold classic Sublime song that I fell in love with. I found the build-up and release of tension to be incredibly euphoric. The song bringing out the mushroom tip portion also caught my attention when I heard it as a teenager. The groove is insatiable, and the vocals hooked me in, despite me literally not understanding a good bit of this track. That is when you know a song is truly special. Highway to Hell Award for Best Musical Intro. Pawn Shop wins this category, thanks to that astonishing, Pearl Jam-esque guitar play at the start. Brad's riff does come across like something Mike McCready could have cooked up on a demo for 10. I am not sure I could come up with a higher compliment. The Lithium Award, Best Opening Line. Summertime and the Livin's Easy off Doing Time wins this one. In 5 simple words, Sublime unveils their lyrical calling card. This line says so much about the band's music, lyrics, vocals, sound, style, and ethos. I made this the title of a playlist of feel-good rock songs, and I really don't think I could have selected a stronger winner for either of those 2 titles. Eruption Award for Best Musical Extended Piece. The instrumental section on Seed is quick and even slightly broken up by Bradley's howl, but the musical play is pristine and breakneck, all the same. The guitar pitch reaches such a high octave while still being deeply embedded in the band's classic tone. What this segment lacks in length, it makes up for in spirit. Tattoo or t-shirt. So this is a good time to talk about the iconic album artwork, as the man gracing the record cover with the Sublime tattoo surrounded by the black and white floral print is Bradley Knoll. O.P. Ortiz was the man who tatted up the frontman's back and was working with him on the album's artwork. But with Brad gone before the record's release, it was decided to have the album artwork be Brad's back. It was a terrific decision and touching tribute. So there was originally supposed to be a degenerate clown as the cover, similar to the role that the dad plays in the Wrong Way video. Ortiz has posted online what the image was going to be. And I think either of these ideas would be unbelievable t-shirts to rock. I do not have any tattoos and don't plan on getting any, but quoting parts of what I got for a tattoo could lead to a really powerful, permanent reminder of how these guys have positively impacted my life. Nobody's perfect, so just nitpicks if I have any. I really do enjoy each of the 17 tracks on this album. There is not a song on here that I would not go out of my way to listen to and do not enjoy when queued up when listening to the record all the way through. But because I must pick, I would probably say I'm not as likely to seek out the Ballad of Johnny Butt as much as the other tunes here. I think it is also related to its location in the album, as again, it's paired with Burrito and not far removed from Jailhouse and Pawn Shop, the more deliberate songs on the compilation. But I would happily consume that track and every other song with a smile on my face until the end of time. Going over to Almost Famous. Now this is a piece that I write showing and arguing ultimately why modern music fans should care about this band and record today. And this is titled, They Sound Like Home. Areas of the world can be understood by many cultural pillars: food, fashion, architecture, the list goes on and on. But the soundtrack of a region is what really makes the community sing. Especially in the world of American rock, cities and towns can be defined for decades from a signature sound. When I envision 70s New York, my mind immediately drifts to the charismatic tone of Blondie and the stripped-down quality of the Ramones rocking away at CBGB. When my mind drifts towards the topic of 90s Seattle, my heart beats to the tempo of Smells Like Teen Spirit, Even Flow, Wood, and Spoonman. And when it comes to my place of birth and upbringing, no band has ever musically represented the Southern California lifestyle. And when it comes to my place of birth and upbringing, no band has ever musically represented the Southern California lifestyle better than Sublime. I did not just grow up listening to these guys. I grew up surrounded by guys like them. The voice afflictions, the style, the humor, the outlook on life, the collaboration of surrounding cultures, the diverse musical taste, the booze, the bud, the babes, the beach, all of it was so painfully real to me I practically came of age in the What I Got video. So many bands try and sound like they are from Southern California, or wish with all their heart they grew up there. But one of the ultimate appeals of Sublime's music and persona was that they never gave off an unauthentic vibe. While they famously partied like rock stars, they always accounted for their sand-covered roots. You may not dig their aesthetic, which is totally understandable, as long as you're not a native Californian. But the music comes across as three Long Beach buds swirling their artistic tastes together to concoct a musical margarita, perfect to enjoy as the summer sun beats down on your sunscreen-covered shoulders. And that feeling is evident if you hail from Manhattan Beach or Manhattan, New York. Now that I live on the other side of the country in New England, in a completely different cultural environment than Orange County, Sublime has taken on an even greater significance in my life. Whenever I need a little dose of that California spirit, most notably in the winter when it's 18 degrees outside and I haven't seen the sun for 3 days, all I need to do to remind me of what it's like to feel the sand between my toes is slip on my Vans and fire up Sublime. They sound like home, and they always will. I adore living in New England and am very astute regarding the region's cultural pinpoints, but even if I live the rest of my life here, get married, start a family, I will never be from here. As any non-army brat will tell you, you only get one hometown. Even people who moved around a lot will always have that single neighborhood or community they see when they close their eyes and envision their childhood home. And the soundtrack to the area that helped me become the person I am today is coded in Sublime's music. And that is not just a personal anecdote. The California DMV should hand out the band's self-titled album when people get their driver's license, as it is simply a rite of passage to roll down your windows, cruise down the Pacific Coast Highway en route to In-N-Out, and blast Santeria and Bad Fish loud enough for Catalina Island dwellers to sing along with the chorus. And if that last sentence sounded so inconceivable you confused my world building with a foreign proverb, dolphin dive into Sublime's music, especially this album, and the vision will start to get less blurry for you. As the building blocks of Southern California culture, expressing yourself freely, relaying mostly a laid-back attitude but not being afraid of adding real bite when the situation calls for it, wanting to cruise up and down the coast in search of the best beach, bar, bud, booze, and babe, not shying away from adding humor to your personality, treating serious matters with respect but never taking yourself too seriously, incorporating different flavors from surrounding neighborhoods and communities into your own recipe, and never turning your back on a good time can all be found in Sublime's music. There is a plethora of iconic California bands who did an admirable job of capturing the spirit of the Golden State. But no group has ever accomplished this feat as well, despite being constantly hungover, as Sublime. Decades later, their songs still mark the sound for not just a specific time, but a pretty big place. And in 2026, the band is back with a new album titled Until the Sun Explodes, and are still bringing that special California feel. Original members Eric Wilson and Bud Gaw are now jamming with Bradley Knowles' son, Jacob. And I wish I could end the story here. I really do. But Sublime's self-titled album does not just represent the ultimate Southern California listening experience. The record will always have a tragic aspect that makes the music so much more poignant and important. In the early morning hours of May 25th, 1996, Sublime was staying in the Ocean View Motel in San Francisco. The band had played a gig in Petaluma. The band had played a gig in Petaluma, California the day before. It would be the last time the original Long Beach three-piece would perform together. Bradley Knoll, after being out all night, barged in his bandmates' rooms and wanted to go surfing. The guys were mostly tired and hungover, so they did not engage with his request. Later on, Brad got into his heroin stash and shot up one final time in the room he was sharing with Bud Gaw. Sublime's drummer woke up to find his friend and bandmate unresponsive with foam around his mouth. Lou Dog was curled up nearby, whimpering. Bud knew right away Brad had overdosed and called for assistance. Paramedics rushed to the motel, but by the time first responders got there, Brad was gone. Bradley James Knoll, the creative force and heartbeat of Sublime, was pronounced dead at just 28 years old. Brad's father, Jim, and stepmother were getting ready to take Jacob on a picnic when they got the most horrific call any parent can receive. Upon hearing the news, Brad's parents were understandably devastated. His widow had a slightly different response. I remember my first reaction was just being pissed, Troy Knoll recalled in VH1 Sublime, Behind the Music. I was so mad at him. I wanted him there to yell at him, to knock him around. Even though the whole time we were together, he flirted with death, you're never prepared for it actually happening. On June 1st, 1996, Bradley Knoll's family and friends met in Long Beach, California, to pay their respects. His closest companions took some of his ashes to his favorite surfing spot just down the coast to Surfside. They paddled out and scattered his remains into the Pacific Ocean. The track, Paddle Out, takes on even greater significance with Brad singing out with the Surfside Boys is where I can be found. Eric Wilson and Bud Gaw made two key decisions following Bradley Knoll's passing. One, they released the album they had recorded together as a tribute to their departed bandmate. The other was not continuing the group with another singer and guitar player. Sublime's self-titled major label was released on July 30th, 1996, under MCA Records. In a brilliant and beautiful homage, the album cover was changed to a photo of Brad's back, showing off the tattoo of his band's name. Within weeks of the release, listeners were incessantly calling the world-famous K-Rock to request the song What I Got and others off the group's seminal album. The band's popularity would skyrocket, but the success was cruelly bittersweet. In the years since Brad's heartbreaking passing, his widow has come to terms with him being gone. Heroin addiction's not like any other addiction, said Troy Knoll in VH1's Sublime, Behind the Music. It's an uphill battle for the rest of your life, and he wasn't strong enough to fight it, and he was just tired of fighting it. But what brings me peace is knowing, in my heart, that he just went to sleep. He was just tired. He had finished everything he needed to do in his life, and it was time for him to go. The two remaining original Sublime members would take a hiatus and occasionally perform over the next 3 decades following their frontman and friend's death. But the only time it has ever felt truly right for the guys to perform under the Sublime banner has been recently. Jacob Knoll admirably taking on the role of making new music with Eric Wilson and Bud Gaw to commendably carry on his father's legacy is enough to make any salted curmudgeon smile. The image, songs, and story of Sublime's last record as an original trio keep Bradley Knoll's spirit alive indefinitely. But the fact of the matter is, it is beyond devastating he did not live long enough to know just how far his music would go. A band that had such a likable quality to them, that portrayed the ultimate fun, love, and attitude, that made music with such a vibrancy that it is near impossible to take their tunes without smiling, will always have one of the most crushing moments in rock history attached to their narrative. In a twisted way, that seems very apropos. No matter how much native Southern Californians like to pretend or project that life is a Hollywood film that will always work out in the end, yes, tragedy can still strike with just as much fury in the shadow of a shoreline. And that is an important part of this album and band story. There was always some undercurrent of gloom under Sublime's music, but the spring of 1996 brought a whole new reality to that dynamic. Ultimately, this record serves two significant purposes. The 17 tracks live in harmony as the definitive historical and cultural document for celebrating and understanding the California lifestyle. And the compilation serves as a harsh reminder that even the most perceived joyous individuals can be engaged in the gnarliest of battles. The music will always be there for people wanting to enjoy a relaxing day at the beach or have a heart-to-heart with Bradley Knoll. And that does it for this episode of Don't Scratch the Vinyl. So there's a few housekeeping items before I sign off. Please follow the show along on social media for more music-related content. TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at DSTV Pod. Facebook page is Don't Scratch the Vinyl Podcast. If you enjoyed this content and want more in-depth material, full episodes of Don't Scratch the Vinyl can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Next time, I will be indulging in a unique undertaking. I'll be discussing 2 albums and an EP, Van Halen's 5150 and David Lee Roth's Crazy from the Heat and Eat 'Em and Smile. The recording will also be diving heavily into the story of Diamond Dave leaving the mighty Van Halen after the crazy success of 1984. I may break that up into 2 episodes. We shall see how long the script is. Thanks again for listening. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you got something out of this show if you were a longtime fan of Sublime or did not know much about their music before listening. Please share along with friends and family. Every little bit helps as I continue to grow and refine this program. I hope I did their story justice, as they are a key band in the history of rock music and obviously mean a lot to me personally. Thanks again for hanging out and listening to me ramble about one of the best bands America has ever produced, and one of my personal favorites. And remember this, please, above all else, if you take one thing from the show, remember, you rock, and don't let anyone ever tell you different.